Come on. Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. All right. Hey, everyone. Hello, and welcome once again to another edition of Latest in the Law. I have with me right now Mr. Ian Runkle of Runkle of the Bailey. How's it going, Ian?
Things are a little chaotic where I am.
Oh, you don't say. Why would that be?
Never before invoked Emergencies Act. That's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, right. Super interesting stuff. Now that's not on the list of topics, but I'm happy to discuss it if you want to, if it's on the brain.
Oh well, it's I think that they ought not to have done it. It's I think that it's very difficult to justify that we're in a state of sort of the kind of national emergency that was contemplated for all of this.
Right.
And once they invoke it once for something like this, it's going to be invoked again and possibly again for all sorts of things. And I think a lot of the people who are celebrating this now will come to regret it if they see it being used to, quell more protests.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I mean, if there's anything that we know about politics, is that every action seems to result in an equal, sometimes unequal, even more forceful action in reverse, right? From the opposing side. So if you expect a certain type of power to be used by one political party, it can totally be used by another one as well. Hey, Nate. So we have joining with us now, we have Nate the lawyer. How's it going, Nate?
Good. Sorry, just you said as soon as I took a swig of water, but yeah, everything's going great.
I timed it perfectly. Yeah, no worries. So anyhow, yeah, so we've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. I know that I added as a latecomer this Bob Saget story, but I figured we could talk about it pretty quickly. I'm sure you guys are aware that the comedian Bob Saget, of course, who was very well known for starring in Full House for so many years, super well known for that, and also a stand-up comedian in his own right. He passed away recently, unfortunately, just like right in the middle of a tour, right in Orlando, Florida. And as it turns out, he apparently hit the back of his head, and there was enough trauma there that when he went to bed, he just didn't wake up. So I don't know if you guys heard about a court injunction about the information surrounding his death. Did you guys hear anything about that or no?
Yeah,
I haven't. I'm curious.
Yeah, I heard about it. The family, some people were going on saying that from the initial reports that the traumatic injury he had to suffer was almost like somebody had to hit him with a baseball bat or something. Like it was a real severe injury. It wasn't something like I just fell and hit my head. So the family, it seems like, doesn't want anybody to delve deeper into that. And it seems like the authorities are saying that there was no foul play involved or anything like that, but they were just saying the circumstances surrounding what type of head trauma would cause such would cause this type of fatality is not just some run of the mill, I hit my head on the wall type thing. It's like, something had to major happen.
Yeah. No, I and I know that a lot of people are very suspicious about the circumstances precisely because of the surprise of his death, and because of
what people have said about the level of force that would be required to create the kind of head trauma that resulted, I guess. But one thing that was interesting was that apparently he also had COVID when he died, and he may have known, he may not have known, I wonder. But I'm
COVID
wondering if maybe that. What's that?
They're probably going to label it as a COVID death so they can get more money.
I know. That was my first thought too. Was like, oh great, this is another COVID death, right? But I think it's possible, because I've heard of people finding out that they have COVID because of that. They don't have really any other symptoms, except they just like pass out and then go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have COVID. That's what's going on. So I have heard of that happening. So I'm wondering if maybe that was the case here. I don't know. But I mean, obviously I don't have any information to know whether there was any kind of foul play or not. But if the authorities don't think so, I don't really have any reason to think so, other than, there is that odd question. But it seems like, so I had some people kind of asking about the Bob Saget situation and the court's injunction. And it seems like what the family is requesting, and it kind of reminds me of Kobe Bryant, actually, that what the family is requesting is not necessarily for the details of his death to not be made public, but there are like photos and videos and things like that could be potentially very traumatic for the family to have made public. And so that's kind of the thing that they are trying to sort of shield and keep private and whatnot. And that seems to make a lot of sense, right? Like he was a public figure. He was very well known. He was very famous, but at the same time, he still had a private life, right? And he still had a family, and they have a right to a certain level of privacy and dignity and that kind of thing. So,
but the thing is that
rumors quite like an information vacuum.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
But also too, we're talking about public documents. And on one instance, I do agree. Right, I agree that there should be some privacy. But if we're talking about suppression of public documents, I think we're walking a fine line there, right? Because it's like, if his family, with any family, and that's my only retort to this, is that with any family who didn't have the Bob Saget means, like the people who didn't have that much money to be able to file a motion to do it, would they be able to hide this from the public? And I just don't think that would be the same for everyone. So it seems to be a special kind of thing for them, and I understand why, and I agree with it. Yeah. But I would just like to see some type of procedure where a family doesn't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to court to be able to get this particular privilege. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I do think that this is also kind of one of those unique situations that, because there is so much interest in the circumstances, I think they felt that they needed to do that. But if you have somebody that's not that died in somewhat unusual circumstances, and they're not famous, people don't know about them, there may not be as much of an interest in that kind of information. So so I can also see that, your average family of somebody who passed away under unusual circumstances like that, they wouldn't necessarily need to file something like that, because of the fact that, I mean, who's asking for it, right?
Well, yeah, but it's that, like, what they call it, the limited public figure status, like, just for that, like, you can die in an unusual way and it can become a news story, right?
That's fair.
And they're like, oh my God, and it's like, and you're not a public figure, but in that moment you are, and then people will be like, hey, we want to know more. So, but you're right. I think on average, you're right. You're probably not going to come to this problem, but I would just like to see a process in which everyone would be afforded this privilege, to suppress public documents on behalf of privacy.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Let me get a couple super chats here. In Fantasy I Die says, oh, look, it's Galadriel, Legolas, and Nadadelph. Sorry. I'm struggling with these names. Enough hairstyle variations to start an 80s glam metal band. Nate, send me out with a MAGA country.
No, not MAGA country. It's this. This is MAGA country. I'm doing it like Macbeth. This is MAGA country. Nigeria.
I like the variations that you have now between
Yeah, you got you got to
like
mix it up.
there's the projection and there's just the deep statement now. Just this is what it is. Andy the Game Maker says, "Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Andy. How are
Hey,
you?
Andy.
Hope you're doing well."
Hey.
So, okay, so that is Bob Saget. Now let's talk about. So I spent a lot of time yesterday talking about this and going through the complaint for the family of Halyna Hutchins versus
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin and all the other people that are involved in this film and Rust. Have you guys had a chance to see any of the documents? There's only one document so far, but the complaint or anything like that.
Yeah, I've looked through it. It's some parts of it are pretty standard for a complaint, and some parts, or at least by Canadian standards, seem a little interesting. But a lot of it is stuff that I sort of had to dig up just in terms of the safety rules and so forth. But so a lot of it's confirming stuff that I spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out for myself, because it's such a weird gun safety in the movie industry is such a weird thing as compared to normal gun safety kind of thing. Right.
And yeah, because it's one of those things that, like, anytime we're talking about a movie set, we're there's always a possibility that there's going to be a different standard, just because it's there's a different purpose for the firearm, right? So like the firearm is there basically to pretend to be a real firearm, but at the same time they're using a real firearm. So it's kind of this weird sort of gray area in between that, if these were people on a normal gun range or, out hunting or whatever, it would be a very simple, straightforward analysis of like what people's responsibilities are. But because you have sort of shared responsibilities and delegated responsibilities for safety in a lot of respects, it's easy to kind of look at this and say, okay, well, this is not necessarily as simple and straightforward as it would be otherwise.
Yeah, so. It's weird. I think they definitely have him for, like, first he's going to have to pay, right? Somebody's going to have to pay this woman some serious cash, right? Either the armor, but somebody's coming out of pocket. No doubt about it. Them filing this thing was just, they could have, and this is what I usually do pre-litigation. For those of you who know pre-litigation is, it's usually so we don't have to file a paperwork. We know you're going to have to pay. It's just really about amount. So if you want me to file a paperwork to embarrass you publicly, fine. But usually you just make a phone call. Let's deal with this instead of this. So I don't know why they had to file for this, because to me this could have easily been a phone call. But maybe the numbers.
I have a theory about that.
Right.
I have a theory about that. Well, I think that half of this is public relations. And I say that because not just because of the language in the complaint itself, like Ian, you and I were kind of talking about that a little bit through DMs yesterday, but also the video, the video graphics that they made for the whole press conference that they had, talking about how they were filing this complaint. Like, they have a whole, like, they're not just filing a complaint, like they had a whole,
that video is something else
that they were doing.
Yeah.
I should have pulled that up so that I could share that video.
Do you have the reenactment?
Yes, I do, because I can find it fairly quickly because I sent it to Ian yesterday. So
on top of that, he crossed state lines, right? He crossed state lines by coming back to New York.
Yeah, as we all know, it's illegal to cross state lines ever.
Yes, of course.
Give him 100 years crossing state lines.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Okay, let's see here. All right, so there's actually 3 parts to this. Oh wait, okay. Let me share my screen and we can go over this, because this is just, I mean, it's pretty wild. Okay, let's make this bigger. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear this. Okay, let me know if you
the audio is important on this one.
Yeah. Oh, and of course with the pinwheel of death.
It said that dial-up internet modem, baby.
I know. Come on now. Let's see here. Oh, come on. Let's try this again here. I'll refresh the screen. Oh, what the heck? Maybe I have too many tabs open. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Wow,
There's
just
just a
look
few
at your
open, yep.
tabs. You got the mother lode of tabs.
I know. This is the story of my life. Do you guys hear anything? Or did you hear
Nah,
anything?
it's still the pinwheel of death right now.
Yeah, okay. It was for a second. I'm sorry, guys. This is...
No, it's fine. Do you want to send it to me? Maybe I can play it on my end.
Yeah, maybe, you know what? Yeah, I'll send you this this article. I'll send it to you in the private chat. Okay. Do you have it, Nate?
Yes, I
Okay.
just got it. And
Okay.
it is the pinwheel of death for me. I think everybody's got the pinwheel of death.
Oh,
I think
no.
the problem is on their end.
Okay. Oh, shoot.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
then
no,
let me
no,
see.
it's not. It's good. No, it's good. It's good.
Oh, it's good?
playing.
Okay, okay.
And you
All
said the
right.
sound was important too. So here, let me share this and put the sound on. All right. Share screen. Don't share that screen. That's my bank account information. Share this screen. All right.
Go. There we go. There we go.
We ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go. The killing. I like
Yeah.
it. The killing. This is like a Hollywood production right here.
I know.
Yep.
They spent a lot of money on this.
Well, it's got credits in the lower left there.
Digital into the church.
Yes.
Here you go, man. Take
Sound
this
effects.
gun and kill this woman.
Don't check the chamber. Sit down.
Killer. Alec Baldwin. I'm surprised that's not up there. Well, they all masked up too, showing they
Yeah.
gave COVID protocols.
Of course. Yep. Where's Joel Souza in this?
That was pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty quick. And then there's
That was
two more
part one.
parts to it.
There's two more parts to it. That was only part
Yeah,
one.
they're on the same page there.
All right, I see part two. I'm
After the ad.
clicking the ad now. All right, so part two. Is it part two? Is it part two?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this may be part two. No, this is a day in history. Here it is, part two.
Oh, there we go. There
They
we
make
go.
you do a lot of ads for part two. Damn
They
you, New
do.
York Post. Damn you.
How dare you make money?
It's probably on YouTube too.
The Rust crew and cast committed major breaches of industry safety protocols.
Soft, ominous music.
The music is the killer. The music is good, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Baldwin and his production crew were performing a lineup. A lineup is used to confirm where to locate and angle the camera. Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to use a replica or rubber prop gun whenever possible. It was unnecessary for Mr. Baldwin to use a revolver for the lineup.
That's true. It is unnecessary.
Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin, as a producer and lead actor, to accept the revolver directly from or in the presence of the production's armorer.
Yep.
Mr. Baldwin did not accept the revolver from the armorer. The armorer was not even in the same room. Mr. Baldwin allowed Mr. Halls, the first assistant director, to confirm for him the deadly weapon was safe.
Whenever you want me to stop it, I can
Mr.
stop it
Halls
too, if you
was
want.
not qualified
All right.
in weapons safety. Mr. Halls did not look at every round in the revolver's cylinder. Industry standards required that Mr. Baldwin personally perform or observe a visual inspection of the revolver to confirm it contained no live rounds.
That's what I do every time somebody hands me a gun.
Well, all of this is correct in terms of the description of the standards.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to be trained and qualified in safe handling and proper firing procedures before accepting the revolver. Mr. Baldwin refused weapons training on how to perform a cross draw, the type of gun draw he was about to perform in the church.
And that might be
The
because
first
he's
rule
still
for
acting gun.
safety with firearms on a production set required Mr. Baldwin to treat all firearms as if they were loaded and refrain from pointing a firearm at anyone. The industry standard required Mr. Baldwin to remember that any person or object at which he points a firearm could be destroyed. Mr. Baldwin aimed the revolver at his cast and crew within a dangerous distance. The cast and crew were only 4 feet away from Mr. Baldwin's weapon. Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to ensure any crew in the line of fire had protective glass or other personal protective equipment. Industry standards required remote operation of the camera if Mr. Baldwin ever aimed the gun at the camera.
Baldwin's going at people, so I'm gonna put my bulletproof vest on just in case. I'm scared to death here.
I already put up my plexiglass in front of me. Interesting.
Remove primer, yeah.
When you shake a dummy round, you hear a BB rattle.
You do.
When you shake a live bullet, you do not hear anything.
That's true. When you shake it, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that refusal for training was something that was alleged by Hannah Gutierrez in her lawsuit. That kind of came out at that point that he had actually been offered training and refused it.
Now I wonder if that's because he's like, I'm a big shot. I've done this on, hundreds of movies. I don't need the training, or if it's because of his, he's quite open about his distaste for firearms. So,
yeah, I would think that his distaste for firearms should be all the more reason why he should have training before he properly handles it.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is one more, but we don't. I mean, I guess we're probably okay with just that. You can get a pretty good flavor of this this video.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see the third one because they
the
so many
third
ads
one,
in here.
Yeah, the third one is just below the second one. It's like 2.5 minutes long, and it's
I don't
talking
even know what the
about.
second one is at. So this is an ad.
I think
Come
it
on, New
might
York Times.
be. Oh, go
This
up.
one?
I think it might be that one.
It's just a spinning wheel.
You might have
sorry.
to refresh. No, that's okay. That's okay. We don't need to. But it's so I'll. You know what? I will link to the article in the description in case anybody wants to see it. But.
Oh, here it is. It's coming up now.
Okay.
There it is. All right.
I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
Using his own words.
Yep. That's why you don't do those kind of interviews.
There's definitely two deliberate acts that were required there. He had to cock the gun and
Oh, I
he had
saw
to
that.
press the trigger. If he had his finger on the trigger, here and he's pressing it,
Yeah.
he may not be aware that he's pressed the trigger. Then he pulls the hammer back
Right.
and then he releases it and then the gun fires.
So dramatic.
This is how to get paid millions of dollars.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, it'll be interesting to see if this might have been a defective revolver, but I doubt it.
Right.
Oh,
Yikes. Oh God.
would have went through though, right?
Yeah, all the way through and then into
Ooh, the
Sousa.
long way.
Yeah.
Sniper Elite 4 bullet cam.
Whew.
I gotta have dramatic music.
Yeah. So obviously there is hey Emily D. Baker, she's in the chat. Yeah, this
Damn, one
doesn't
shot,
this,
2 kills.
this doesn't address whether or not the gun was working properly, but that's something that is going to be investigated, right? That's something that obviously the police or the FBI, I think, actually took the custody of the revolver to check it out and to make sure that everything was working properly. And so, I mean, that's they're going to find out one way or another, right? So, unless there's something that they find that there's something wrong with the gun itself and it's just working the way that a normal gun works, then it seems like this is going to be a very, 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 very damaging situation for Alec
this is
and
open.
for everyone else, really.
This is as open as shows. If these are the industry standards and they all, and just reading through them, they failed everything. Every single one of them is gone. So you can, let's say if you had 2 of them, then you can make an argument that we can fight about 2. But all 15, like, this is ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, just look through them. Failed to use a replica or a rubber prop gun. Failed to treat the gun at all times as if it were loaded. Failed to refrain from pointing a firearm at anyone. Failed to treat the gun as if any person the firearm was pointing at could be destroyed. Failed to keep finger off the trigger. Failed to operate camera remotely when the firearm was aimed at or near the camera. Failed to provide adequate personal protective gear to everyone in the line of fire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. So this is
the whole defense of, hey, I mean, let's assume for the sake of argument that this is a defective gun. The hammer is going to drop even if you're not pulling the trigger, because this is a uniquely defective gun. Even then, I don't see that getting them out of liability here. Even if it's, there's just so many things that they did wrong.
Yeah.
The defective gun doesn't get you past the whole point. That's why they say you don't point the gun at nobody, right? That never you have a protective shield just in case you have a defective gun. So, yeah,
that's why those industry standards are there, right?
Yeah,
like that's why they have them, is to ensure that if something goes wrong with the firearm, if something goes not according to plan, it doesn't function properly and something goes wrong, then nobody gets hurt. So, yeah, as far as negligence is concerned, we have that in spades. As far as recklessness is concerned, I think there's actually a decent chance in this case, because of the fact that the complaint also alleged that there were numerous complaints that were made about safety, made directly to various levels of producers and production managers and all kinds of different people. Like, so not even like they told the person that happened to be on set, hoping that they would report that up, and then somehow there was a break in communication. Like, no, these are people that were reporting like directly to certain producers and executive producers, and apparently saying, hey, we have problems here. We had two discharges accidental discharges on these firearms. We also had, some explosives that went off that weren't supposed to go off. We have some major safety issues going on here. And the responses were time. We gotta rush. We gotta hurry up. That was the response. So that and the budget. So I think that there's a decent chance in this case that they are going to not only be able to pull in people like Alec Baldwin, who was the person who actually had the gun in his hand when it went off, and I know a lot of people get very, very animated when I or anyone else uses a phrase like that to say the gun went off, saying guns don't just go off, you pull a trigger and it goes and then it fires. But in this particular case, who knows if the gun actually was defective? We don't know that yet. Maybe not. We haven't heard anything.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I
Right.
mean, that would be a very helpful fact for Baldwin, but I don't think that it avoids liability unless, because as Nate said, the whole reason why you have gun safety rules is to assume that there's going to be a problem. You don't point the gun. If you're saying, hey, my finger's off the trigger, you still don't point it at something you don't want to destroy because it might go off, because of some defective whatever. It's
I think every gun owner should know is that, number one, the first thing they teach you, treat every gun as if it's loaded and ready to kill someone, right?
Yeah.
So if you do that, then you understand the difference. And it's funny because when you go to the range, and let's say you pick up a gun and you start pointing it, they're going to scream at you. What are you doing? You can even go to jail because that would be assault, right? You're scaring people by pointing a gun at them. It just doesn't make sense for him to say, someone just hands me a gun and I put it and I put pointing at people. I don't think that's the standard anywhere, but maybe on this Rust set, maybe they've had this, maybe that's just what they were doing there, but that's really, really extreme. I do want to make the point though. Well, we are talking about two different things in terms of negligence and recklessness. If we agree negligence, that's a civil standard. That means you're going to pay out your ass. If we're talking recklessness, that means somebody's going to jail. That's what we're talking about, your manslaughter and homicide charges. So this little workup seems to be pointing to some culpable conduct, some recklessness, and a little bit more than negligence, because recklessness is, just so everybody understands the difference, an accident is negligence, but recklessness is that you took a chance that you didn't have to take. So in other words, pointing a gun at someone, I'm taking a chance that gun could be loaded and do something. So if I consciously took that chance and injured somebody, that now is criminal, versus somebody handed me what I thought was a fake gun and pointed at somebody, then that's a different story. So that's what it seems like. They're saying, well, he knew this was a real gun. He knew the procedures and he took that chance anyway and someone died.
Yeah.
Manslaughter.
Right. And to be specific, we are talking about someone either knowing or someone who's in a situation where they knew or they should have known that there was a certain risk and they ignored it. So speaking of ignoring risks, we have with us Mr. Good Logic. Joe Neerman. How's it going?
That was a great intro.
Hey, this is
it's like you're yelling at my tea. and speaking of tea, I've got to get the super chat from the Dragon's Treasure, who was saying earlier that this was looking like when we were trying to load those animated videos about the Halyna Hutchins not criminal, but the civil complaint. He was saying this looks like the perfect time for a tea/ad break, and that actually would have been a perfect time. Today I am drinking, of course, more Dragon's Treasure teas. I have today's flavors are strawberry white. If I can cover up my face, right? So I can, oh geez, can I aim this properly? There we go. Strawberry white. And this is like, I think maybe my new favorite here is butterbeer.
Oh, we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's delicious. It's delicious. So if you guys want to enjoy some tea with a 10% discount and to support the channel, of course, because we do get a kickback, you can go to thedragonstreasure.com and enter the promo code when at the checkout, Legalbytes. then you are not just supporting a great small tea company with delicious teas, but also helping to support my channel and helping me to defeat Eric Hunley, because we are in competition for the month of February to see who can sell more tea.
That bastard.
Relative to our subscriber counts. Yes. So help me beat him, because he's a nice guy. But I still want to win.
He's a good guy.
He is a good guy.
That was my Billy Crystal impression, because he always he always would slip into the old Jewish man screaming, "Those bastards!"
He's a good guy. Yeah, Billy Crystal is he's funny. I haven't seen him in a while. It's been a while.
I think he's dead. They haven't announced it yet. It's kind of like
Billy Crystal.
Yeah.
Have you heard from him
way.
in a long time?
No, he's
haven't.
probably
Not
just
from
enjoying life.
When Harry Met Sally, that's the last time I heard from Billy Crystal.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, he had a lot of years where he was like hosting the Academy Awards and stuff. He was a great host.
Yeah.
He did a movie with Robert De Niro later, I think, called Analyze This or That or something like
Analyze
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think both. The one was
Analyze
a sequel
this
to the
and
other.
Analyze that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever been to Cat's Deli, Joe? Down in Manhattan with Cat's Deli, where they did the whole scene from that movie, the movie Billy Crystal was in. With
That's totally not kosher.
Cat's Deli is not kosher. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's not kosher.
You must be insane. Come on, matzo ball soup. I've had matzo.
Let me tell you something.
At
Hebrew
Cat's
National.
Deli. What are you talking about?
Hebrew National, which like used to make ads, like we're beyond that. We can't put these artificial ingredients into our hot dogs. Because the government says so. We are kosher, and I always would say, no, you ain't.
Oh, they're not really kosher?
No.
Oh, boy.
They're kosher the way your pickles that say kosher on them are, which are also not necessarily kosher, although most of them are. But that's a style. That's basically what it is. Yeah, Hebrew National ain't kosher. It's crap.
Now I know.
Yeah. The more you know. There you go.
But you know what else was a good Billy Crystal movie? Was City Slickers. I haven't seen that one in a long time.
This is good. Yeah.
I haven't seen that one in a
But I
very
sense
long
that.
time.
So here's the interesting thing. I sense that City Slickers is kind of. There's some sitcoms that if you go back and you watch them today, you're like, that's okay. It's not nearly as knee slapper as I thought it was. And others, you go back and you're like, wow, this is still really freaking funny. Well, I actually noticed this when it came to Seinfeld. If you look at Seinfeld, it's not as funny as it was when I first watched it. It's really not. It's okay. It's not bad. It's cute. It's not like laugh out loud type of thing. In contrast, if I watch Cheers today, that's really still funny. And I never would have thought that Cheers was funnier than Seinfeld, but it's actually still funny today when you watch it. That's just my take.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
You were talking about Alexander R. Baldwin III. You were talking
yes.
about we're talking about this innocent man. This man is railroad who's going to win this lawsuit.
A good man who is just in an unfavorable position.
The unfavorable position of having been like recklessly disregarding, borderline criminally killing this woman.
and then just not shutting up about it and going around the internet and around the world to try to tell everyone that he's a good guy.
Her. I wouldn't shoot anybody. I'm holding the gun, and when I fired it, it went off by accident when it was cold and there was no bullet in there. That's Did you notice as Nana's defendant, he's Alexander R. Baldwin III and not Alec? And it's
I didn't realize his legal name was Alexander. And it's funny, I said that yesterday in the live stream where I was going over the complaint, and someone in the comments was like, "Oh, I guess you're not that smart of a lawyer because you didn't know that Alec is short for Alexander." I'm like, I grew up with an Alec. I have a friend named Alec whose legal name is Alec. Like Alec is a name.
Yeah.
I love the
he's an Alec
I love the idiots who always like to point out, "You're a lawyer, you didn't know that." I'm like, well, you're a fucking car wash guy. You didn't know that. I don't know what the hell. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't have anything to do with my thing. Go pack grocery bags. What do you know?
No,
What the hell
to
else
some
is that?
people, to some people,
News flash. We don't know everything.
well, here's the thing.
Yeah,
though.
they don't teach you everything in law school, right?
You know why this is?
The
It's
more
because
you
we're
know.
lawyers and we know a lot of idiot lawyers. So we know that just because someone's a lawyer doesn't mean that they're intelligent. But to
This
people,
is
to
true.
some people who are not lawyers, they hear, oh, lawyer, and they assume the person is supposed to be educated, smart, and like basically know everything. There are only a handful of people like that. Most of our viewers, I'm sure, look at this and they're like, these are the 4 of the biggest clowns I've ever seen in my life. But but there are still some people out there who's like, they hear lawyer and they assume like, oh, wow, how do you not know this? I'm smarter than you. And, you know, yeah, a lot of us are stupid, myself especially.
But that's the thing about this being a practice of law, is that we are always practicing, which means that we are always learning, whether we are learning about the law or other things, like the fact that Alec can, I guess, be short for Alexander, has nothing to do with the law at all.
We're
you know,
so
we're
dumb we didn't realize that. Like, what
He's
the
also
hell?
the third. He's also the third. Like, who gets named the third? That's his legal name. Who gets
Well,
named?
that's my legal name's the third too, though. So I got.
Are you really?
Got to put a bite the bullet on that one. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, to be fair, that was not his choice,
save it.
probably, right?
Yeah, it's not my choice. It was just like they threw the gender on me, and now they threw my name on me. So I'm forced to keep them both for life.
But if you're white and you're the third, I think that just smells like you're born to be an a-hole. I don't know. It just does. You just picture the guy, like, you just picture him on a country estate with his ponies. That's the third. That's a white person named the. That's what I picture. At least I don't know. Maybe I'm
Yeah, I could see that. Let me get caught up on one last super chat here. Brick Cormier says, "Hello, LawTube grifters. I see you are taking cues from Amazon by spreading your poison to Middle Earth. This is totally uncalled for and needs to be stopped immediately, if not sooner." I appreciate that. We will get right on that. So Joe, what are your thoughts on this lawsuit that was in my opinion, a long time coming? We all saw this coming from a mile away, that the family of Halyna Hutchins was going to file a civil lawsuit for a wrongful death. What are your thoughts on this?
I went through the complaint last night I did like a Nick stream. I started very late and he wasn't on the air. So I did like my own stream on it. And I actually was getting drunk while I was reading it and still slightly drunk. And and basically I thought it was really well written. I thought it was really well done. And yeah, he's going down. he's going. I mean, and I think a lot of people. I think they're expecting to be making many tens of millions from this, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's what they end up taking out of it. I was explaining what loss of consortium is because I think very few people know what that really means.
Right.
And it's not just sexual, Runkle. Okay.
But it's not.
I know it's one of those claims that's like, it's kind of awkward to talk about because you're like, you have to talk about the physical intimacy, the quote unquote big biblical intimacy between husband and wife, but
that he knew her biblically
and that he was planning to continue knowing her in that sense, in the future for decades and decades.
But is loss of consortium exclusively sexual? I mean, it could also. No, it's not.
No,
right?
it's also very much emotional. It's the that he would be seeking guidance from her, in his life, in his career, and he would be relying on her for helping to raise their son, and also their son is also able to file a claim for loss of consortium as well. It's not the case in every single state, and I talked about this yesterday on my channel as well on this. Having to do with this complaint, that traditionally a loss of consortium claim has been just exclusively for spouses, because we are talking about like the most intimate of relationships, right? But over the years, a lot of states have expanded that to be basically the direct family of the person who either died or was very, very egregiously harmed, that they can no longer provide emotional support to the people around them. So when we're talking about a child of the person, we're talking about a minor child. Same thing with if the minor child is the one that died, or that is like seriously harmed, a parent of a minor child can also get can also claim loss of consortium, because we're talking about just the closeness that you have and the bond that you have between a parent and a child, and between two spouses, right? There's just something that is just taken away from the people who are left behind, because the wrongful death claim is for the person that died, but the loss of consortium claim, that is a claim that is owned by the widower and by the son who's been left behind.
Right. And that's actually what I was trying to explain to them, is that you have to realize that through one incident, there's a lot of different damages. I was walking them through the economic loss of the doctor. You have the doctor bills, and then you have the loss of earnings that she would have been making. Let's say someone gets injured, that, you know, how much money they were making. That's an economic. You can boil that down into the, okay, dollars and cents. How much was the total? Where would I have been versus where am I now? So I lost some money. I have to pay doctor's bills. I lost some money that I didn't earn, money that I otherwise would have earned. That's your economic losses. And then there's the pain and suffering. And there's first suing on the one side as her pain and suffering.
Yes.
Just she suffered, and she also lost out the balance of her life. So you want to get for that pain, and that's part of the suffering. But then there's this. So now she's suing. But because she's gone, someone has to step into her shoes. So her heirs, specifically her husband, steps into her shoes and now collects on her behalf because of her own individual suffering. And then loss of consortium has nothing to do with her damages. It's him saying, hey, I'm suffering now, and this is my suffering. So you have to compensate both for her suffering and for my suffering. And that's what the loss of consortium is all about.
And one minor wrinkle, and I know that you understand this, but for anybody that is interested in the minutia here, is that in New Mexico, you have somebody that is for filing for a wrongful death claim. You have somebody that is filing to be a personal representative. So this is like it's almost like an extension of probate. So you have somebody that specifically does. And so at the end of January, I think it was like January 28th or something, there was a lawyer who is, I guess, close to the family, the Hutchins family, who's a New Mexico lawyer who filed a petition requesting to be named as the personal representative under that specific statute. And so that's actually technically the third plaintiff. So she's the one that technically is stepping into the shoes of Halyna Hutchins for that purpose. So my assumption is that all of the funds that they would get for the wrongful death claim would be taken up by the personal representative and then shifted over to whatever estate plan that they have. Because I said this yesterday.
You might not get all of it, right?
Yeah. So it's either going to go into whatever trust that they have set up, which is my guess, because we haven't heard anything about a probate action being opened. Or if there was no trust, then they would set up a probate proceeding for it.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're right. Did you watch the movie?
Which movie?
Yes, you mean the movie?
Oh, the animation. Yeah. Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Did you watch it? What do you think?
I thought it's an interesting strategic move. This is not something that you ever really get this. I don't think I've ever seen something like that done before. That's
Never.
An investment of thousands of dollars that they made, and they know it's not going to get before a jury. Yeah. Right? I mean, there's absolutely no way on earth any judge would let that come before a jury because it's so prejudicial, and if any little element of it is inaccurate, which there's no reason to assume that every element of it is accurate. I'm sure that some elements, his facial expression or stuff like that, is not going to be the same. So it's not going. There's no way they're going to nail that just right. No one even knows what the hell his facial expression was. So none of it. So there's no way it gets before a jury. So then you ask yourself, well, why are they doing it? Why are they investing the thousands of dollars into this? And
pure PR.
Yeah, it's pure. Exactly. And that's a really interesting move. But that's a real that to me, that's telling me that this is a firm which is really, really dedicated to making sure they milk every penny they can out of this. They're investing the thousands of dollars just to get general PR out there, help taint the jury pool, or help intimidate the defendants into thinking, Jesus, this is not going to look good if we have to come before a jury.
I wonder if they sent them a letter before this and said, hey, you guys want to settle before we file. And if this isn't sort of the escalation, if they got told no and
Yeah.
said, okay, if you guys aren't going to settle before we file, we're going to make this real embarrassing.
Or they may have figured, there's already been so much that's been put out into the press about this that we need something out there for the public, because Alec Baldwin, with his many statements that he's made, and his sit down interview with George Stephanopoulos, they may be thinking, okay, this is what he's due. I mean, they may be thinking specifically about Alec Baldwin, and the complaint calls him out by name multiple times. It calls out, a number of people, but more so Alec Baldwin than anyone else, I would say. But it seems like I wouldn't be surprised, at least, if part of the reason for all of the dramatics, the animation, and all that kind of stuff is kind of maybe in anticipation that he's going to go off and have his own campaign, that he's going to go and have more interviews, more statements, more ways to get his
PR
side
firm.
out in the yeah.
And
So
I don't have a whole lot of experience in Hollywood accounting other than to know that it's a thing. But I wonder if part of the reason why they keep naming him so much is just the concern that the money anywhere else might run away.
It's not just that it could run away. I'll tell you, from doing judgment execution here in New York, you always want an earner. It's better than someone with not just a deep pocket, but a deep pocket that's going to keep generating revenue. Because instead of having to try to find a bank account, you can attach the assets directly from their source of revenue. So this way, you basically they can go to Universal or whoever it is that's going to hire him next and say, yeah, that contract he signed with you for $6 million, well, he owes us 40. So we're going to be attaching all of that. Or certainly, depending on the state, some states won't allow you to attach all of it. We're going to be attaching, X percentage of it. And this way they know that they're going to be able to keep getting it. If it's a studio, which is especially a small-time studio like these seem like they are, well, who knows if, they're going to fold up the day after the judgment gets entered and say, okay, we can't pay this off. We're filing bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So, and we'll just start a new studio tomorrow. So this way they have a solid name that they feel confident is going to keep earning, from their perspective, hopefully for decades to come, and that they can, and not just earning, but earning, seven digit checks, which will, go a long way towards satisfying a judgment if they should, if and when they succeed in obtaining one.
The only
assuming that this complaint isn't just high octane BS, and I don't think that it is, but assuming that it isn't, I think they're going to get some money sent their way.
Yeah, I definitely think so. The only part that we haven't really touched on here, which I think is probably going to play an important role, is the insurance. Not knowing what their insurance policies were, how those max out. I would be very curious to see what those insurance policies look like, because that is probably going to really impact how much they can collect as well.
I have a feeling that this isn't one of those ones that settles for policy limits, though.
Yeah, I think this is going to go beyond, and that's why they want to go after Baldwin, because they want to. Because if I think the policy limits, if it's like $5 million, I mean, how much more than that would it possibly be? I think that they're gonna. I don't think they'll just say, "Okay, we'll take the $5 million and settle and sign a waiver on the rest." I don't think they'll do that. I think they'd rather win and get a judgment far next to that, then collect that money off the top from the insurance company. A lot of times the way it happens in your normal accident, when you have when I say normal, I mean typical run-of-the-mill individual like you or me, if we're, or some client that comes into us. So when you get offered the policy, with that, they say, okay, take the policy and sign a waiver that you're done and there's no further claim. And you sort of figure, okay, how much am I going to get from this defendant anyway? How much money they have? It's not someone Alec Baldwin who shoots them. Think about this for a second.
That's true.
If this is some low budget film where there's really no major actors, there's no money in the company that's at least known to exist there. And now you get offered a policy where you recognize, hey, if I go to court and I get a judgment against them, what the hell is that going to be worth? And maybe I'm not going to get the judgment. So you have those concerns. So you say to yourself, you know what? Let me grab the $5 million max policy and I'll get and go my merry way, because that's all I'm ever going to get from this. But because you have a deep pocket here, and he's so directly involved in this accident in a myriad of ways, that I think that, yeah, even if they offer the policy, if they say, here's the policy, sign the waiver, they say, screw that. We're not signing any waiver. We're going to get more than that.
We're going to get your policy and whatever you got in your pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a very good point.
I think one thing that you guys are, well, maybe you guys said it because I went to the restroom, but in Hollywood, if you're an actor, you have to be able to get insured, the set insured. So if you're an actor that has a lot of these things, you can't get the insurance. You can't get, what do they call it, bonded? I forget the technical term they have. And if you can't get the insurance, you can't work. So I think his issue is also too, if he's going to do any other films or any other projects, he's not going to be able to do it because he's not, what insurance company is going to insure him after taking a $5 million hit? It's going to be less likely.
I don't know if they would say, put yourself in the shoes of an insurance company. You think they would be afraid that he's going to like kill someone again by accident, that they would be they wouldn't take the insurance money? It's not like he's some one and done type of actor. This guy's been doing this for 35 years. He's been acting. So I think they might, I'm sure they'll jack up his rates, but as far as him being uninsurable, I don't know if that's really going to play for Alexander R. Baldwin III. So
yeah, that's true. But
I refuse to call him Alec.
I noticed.
You need to add the third each time.
Yeah, Alexander the Third. Pinkies out, Alexander the Third.
Born asshole. Out of the womb, you're an asshole.
Oh man, I mean that's possible. I mean, so either he'll have a hard time getting insurance, or it's just going to be incredibly expensive. I wonder if he's just not going to make films after that, because I mean he also, so I mean here's another possibility, Joe, is that for whatever work he does in the future, or he was planning on doing in the future, what if he just decides, I'm not going to work anymore,
I'm retiring,
I have enough.
That's
right?
why, yes, that's why as a judgment execution, when you're executing the judgment, if that's the case, that they enable you to take it. In normal wages, like in New York, the way wages work is you can only seize 10% of a person's salary. So if I'm trying to execute judgment, excuse me, if I'm trying to execute a judgment against somebody in New York, basically, and I find their employer, so I would attach it directly from the employer, and I would take 10% off of the top. Well, let's say the person in another judgment, someone else already did that. I don't get anything. That 10% goes to whoever came first until they get satisfied. It's really a race to see, and it varies dramatically from one state to another as to how execution works. And also when it comes to execution, if they get this judgment in New Mexico, they're going to have a follow-up entry in California if they want to execute in his work in California, or if he goes to New York. Each state, you need to take the judgment and get it entered there, and every state will have different guidelines for how it is that you can execute and seize the assets. In Florida, if he moves to Florida, which, by the way, if you're Alexander R. Baldwin III, you should take up primary residence in Florida. The reason, or Texas,
not legal advice.
I'll tell you. And
Yes.
No, this is legal advice. You should.
I'm telling you right now. I'll tell you right now. There's some states that they make it nice and easy to execute judgment. In Florida, it is impossible. I don't know how any judgment execution company survives in Florida. If you're the primary earner for your family, the judgment creditor gets to execute zero. Nothing. Your house, if it's your primary residence, is protected. There's no way to get anything. That's why Trump, I think, is living in Florida. He knows anyone gets judgment against him, there's no way you can't attach anything. There's nothing you can go after. You have to find the money in his pockets. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know how they do it there. Yeah,
OJ flew his ass to Florida.
It's actually called in the industry. It's actually known as debtor's haven, because people just flock down there. Maybe that's why a lot of old people move down there, They all got
Maybe.
judgments against them, and they're like, "Hey,
This is better.
yeah, see ya. I'm gonna go to Florida. I'm totally safe. I'm totally safe down there." So yeah, it's a big factor. It's a really and everyone should know. Just I don't want to. I've been mic hogging since I walked in here. I feel guilty.
No, but it's good. You've got some good information here.
Speak your mind, brother. Speak it.
Yeah, that when it comes to now I forgot what I was gonna say. Damn it!
You see, because you said you were
Something
mic
about
hogging. Now
debtors
you
in
forgot it.
Florida, old
Yeah,
people.
we're
Old people,
Trump,
yeah,
OJ,
Trump.
old people.
It'll come to me soon. You
Ah.
guys
Moving to Florida.
Well, listen,
talk
let-
amongst you. Talk amongst yourselves.
Let's talk about the other big development in the court system. The Giuffre. What's her name? Guthrie.
Oh,
For
Guthrie.
the prince.
Guthrie.
Yeah,
Virginia
Virginia
Giuffre.
Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre.
Guthrie.
Oh, Guthrie?
Guthrie.
Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was Giuffre. Okay, Guthrie. All right,
Yeah.
cool. I've only ever seen
Well, she
her
was going
name
by
written.
Virginia
so.
Roberts.
Yeah.
Okay,
She was going
okay.
by Virginia
And-
Roberts, and then she changed it. Then it's her real name is Guthrie, as they say.
Okay. So, of course, we are talking about the Prince Andrew settlement. That was something that was not expected, right?
I was sure it was coming.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
really?
I guaranteed that was going to happen. So soon as they
Yeah.
got to discovery, they went. When you get to discovery on that case,
Yeah.
emails, phone calls,
Yeah.
sex trafficking all over the world. You know, it's like, and on top of that, the reason why he was stripped of everything they knew it was coming down, and then you're going to have this victim go on the stand and talk about all these sexual innuendos he had with the prince. Yeah, it was time to plea, and I knew the plea was coming when he sold that property, because he sold that property all of a
Oh.
sudden, and it was like he
Yeah.
got that big windfall. He was like, yeah,
And
that's what
wasn't it? Didn't he sell that to some Kazakh like oligarch's son or something like that?
Yeah,
I
but
thought
the
I saw
cash grab,
something
he
about that.
needed cash quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, I mean, both sides of that transaction were very interesting, right? Because there were renewed questions about like potential money laundering on the other side of the transaction, and like just some very, very interesting questions that sort of came up on like the speed of this sale of this property, right? But I mean, I guess you're right. I guess it shouldn't be too surprising that they settled so quickly, because of the fact that he probably saw like, okay, if I can't make this go away with a motion to dismiss, now all of a sudden I'm looking at all kinds of embarrassment, even after he was kicked out of the royal family, right on the heels of that of the judge's decision on that motion. So. Man, I guess I wasn't expecting the settlement to happen quite so soon, because didn't she say? You just remembered, Joe, didn't you?
They
You
always say
remember what
they-
you were
they
going to
never-
say.
they always say they're never going to settle, though. Like every I'm not settling.
Everyone has a
until
price, I
somebody,
guess.
like, here's the number. You
Nobody
know what?
wants to
Let's
have
do
the
it for the
courage.
cause.
Oh yeah, worth looking at a site.
That's true. That's fair. I mean, yeah, because I mean, everyone has, and this is the thing, is like, you know, if you're not familiar with the litigation process, if you're not familiar with settlements, court settlements, you know, you might be thinking about like, okay, this is just jaded humans wanting money. That's really what this all comes down to. But at the end of the day, settlements really are a numbers game, because you have all kinds of things that you are looking at and you are analyzing. Number one, what are the facts in this case? What's this? Which side has more strength in this case? You know, are the facts more in favor of the plaintiff or the defendant here? And how well can either side prove that at trial? Number two, how far into the litigation are we? How much has already been spent? And how much do you expect to be spent to move forward? Because as soon as you get into discovery, costs go way up in any kind of litigation. And that's just dollars and cents. We're not even talking about the emotional cost of going through litigation, which, you know, you don't really know until you've actually gone through it. And this is, I've had so many clients who have told me, like, if I had known that it was going to be this much shit to go through, I don't know that I would have filed, because I don't know that it was ultimately worth it. You know, I've had some clients tell me that. But you know, there's all kinds of different costs that both sides are analyzing at the same time, and it kind of just comes down to at what point will the acceptance level be even between the two? At what point do they begin to cross over, and that's where you have your settlement number?
And there's a much bigger factor than any of that, which is that 79.3%, it's around 79%, almost just under 80% of all judgments get zero satisfaction. So if you go to court, 10 people go to court, file a lawsuit, and half win, half lose. 5 winners, five people go home, they don't win. So out of those 5 winners, 4 will never see a dime. That is a crazy flaw in our judicial system. That is insane, that it's so hard to execute on judgment. I didn't say full satisfaction. I said literally not one dime. It makes you ask yourself, why the hell do we actually have a civil court? Why? What's the point? You're never going to collect. Well, no one's going to collect.
It's funny. I had a client maybe a couple of months ago, comes to me and was like, hey, I have a judgment that I want you to try to execute. I'm like, well, judgment? What are you talking about? From like 1982. I'm like, I got millions of dollars here. I'm like, I'm like, you know what? That piece of paper, however much that piece of paper is worth, that's what you got. Because you ain't got nothing else. That piece of paper is worth some money, but that's it.
Do you want to know how I want to stress a little further? There's actually a website that when I was doing judgment execution, so I had a partner, and he came up with the concept of people selling their judgments online. He actually created a website that's still up there today called Judgment Marketplace. And judgments in general, there's an industry where people will sell judgments and they literally go for like under 5 cents on the dollar. So if you have like a $5 million judgment, it goes for like well under 100,000.
And the reason why somebody would buy a judgment from someone else is because then they would then take on the efforts to try to go and collect.
Right.
It
happens to be a good industry. The people who buy it, they say that the rate of return that they get is like 17% on their money. So if they spend $100,000 buying judgments, so they're expecting to make from all now for $100,000 worth of judgments, you're buying, I don't even know, $50 million worth of judgments, and you're expecting that you're going to make $117,000 out of those millions and millions of dollars of judgments. Mm-hmm. That's how the numbers play out. And it's really just a numbers game as far as you send out voluminous documents to various parties trying to find assets, and then when you find it, you seize it. And
you're talking about debt collection. That's
what it is. Yeah, it's actually debt collection is technically a reference to prejudgment debt, but and there's a lot of exposure that you have, because especially with new rules under the FDCPA, there's a lot of exposure you have that if you don't know what you're doing and you screw up, you're going to get sued, and you're going to be facing a lawsuit where you have to pay the other side's attorney's fees.
But it's great because most people get 0 judgments on the win. So you're like, yeah, sue me. I'm going with the other 89%.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
Oh, man.
It is. It is. And I'll tell you something else. Some judges are like such jerks about it, because I've argued in front of judges to get relief, where it's like, I want to get this safe open, or I want to get this thing seized. And some judges are like, yeah, I don't like this whole industry you're in here. I think you guys are all vultures and you're terrible people. And I'm like, and she said, I'm saving yours for last on the calendar because you're looking for relief. And the bar here is very, very high. It's a very high bar. And so when it was just us in there, so I said, Your Honor, I respect your position on this. I want to point this out, that without people like me, right now with people like me, 4 out of 5 people get 0 cents on the dollar. So without people like me, there would be like what? There'd be 1 in 20 people who actually see any money.
Owe money. They may owe money without.
Yeah. Because they'd be owing their attorney's fees.
Yeah, exactly. So what I give validity to our court system, because without people like me going out there and executing on a judgment, there's no reason to go to court. You're just you're spending tens of thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that is worthless, because you can't do anything with it. We need judges to actually stand up and enforce judgments. Otherwise, what are we doing? Why are we actually having a court system at all?
It's strange to me that a judge would take that kind of a position.
Oh yeah, that's liberal judges in New York. So, and also white women judges are the worst.
Ruh-roh.
I'm just
I
saying.
did not say
I'm just
that. I
saying
personally did not say that.
the best judges, which is ironic considering the climate and times we're living in, the best judges that I've ever been in front of have been black female judges. And I'm not even kidding.
Joe
I'm not
is a racist, and I will not stand for your racism.
I'm telling you right now.
Joe, get out.
Those black women, Joe.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you right now. Okay, I went up in front. I went up after going in front of a white female and hearing that crap about how she doesn't like my industry and that everyone's a vulture and whatever. That I went up against this poor little old black woman, and I was trying to get like $2,000 out of her account that we had seized, and she had a lawyer there, and they came up there, and I said, these are the facts, this is the judgment, here's the money we found, this is why we want to seize it. And that's, and the lawyer came to me, and right before we went up there, literally 5 seconds before we went up there, I said, right now I will split it with you 50-50. I give you back half the money, we go away, I take $1,000, otherwise no. And she's like, and the other lawyer is, Joe, you don't seem to understand the life of being poor. You can't just afford to give up $1,000. So I said, but then she's going to lose $2,000. She really can't afford to lose $2,000. So she's like, you don't understand what it's like to be poor. And we went up in front, and she saw black female judge out there, and she thinks to herself, oh, black female judge is going to be merciful on my client and going to let it go. We get up in front of this black female judge, and she's like, so all these papers are in order, and you owe the money, right? She's like, and the lawyer's like, yeah, but she really can't afford to lose this money. She's like, but there's a judgment, and the papers are in order, so I have to let this go, right? I mean, so all right, judgment for the plaintiff, and I got it all, and I was just like, why didn't you just settle with me? I felt bad for her. I was like, I would have settled. I was totally fine. I can't settle now, right. But hearing this judge say that, I was on the same side as the defendant. I was like, yeah, I'm never going to get this. And I was, you know what? She proved me wrong. And time and again, this happened over and over again. Any black female judge I went in front of, they actually are so scrupulous as far as following the law and the facts and saying we're applying the law and the facts, and they think it through. They pay attention to it, as opposed to the white female judges I've appeared in front of in New York. Time and again, not all of them, but too many of them have basically said, I feel bad.
Joe, I got to cut you off. Cut you off from one thing. This is the reason why Joe Biden came out and said, I am hiring a black justice.
That's what I said.
Joe had just made the argument, baby.
I'm telling you.
Now, follows the law and the facts. Perfect.
Yes.
Exactly what we want, Joe.
They're about this life. They're about that life. They're all subscribed to Nate the Lawyer, and you should too.
Call Joe. He's good for all sorts of things. He can collect your debts, and also he does demonetization for hire.
Oh man.
All right.
Oh, that
was my platform. I'm done there. You guys can all.
You know what? One thing about the Virginia Giuffre, or I'm calling her Virginia Roberts because it's easier to pronounce.
Okay.
One thing about her lawsuit is that she's alleged that Alan Dershowitz and a whole bunch of other people were involved in this thing, right? But now that Prince Andrew's statement said that she was definitely trafficked for sex by Epstein and that type of thing. What does that do to those other cases, like against Dershowitz? Because don't forget, remember that's why Dershowitz got canned from the BBC, because he came on as a neutral party, but then forgot to tell him like, oh no, she's suing me for the same shit too. So
and no one thought to do their due diligence on the subject.
He needed to do a lot of due diligence. Everyone knew. Everybody knew that he's being sued. The BBC did. In this. That's like,
which is ironic because they're supposed to be the ones reporting it.
Yes. That's pathetic.
Oh man, yeah. So wait. So was there a statement from Prince Andrew saying yes, this all happened? Because typically when you have a settlement, there's no culpability. There's no acceptance of liability.
Well, in his statement, he didn't say that he did anything wrong, right?
Right.
Just was like, hey, this is horrible. I was associated with the guy, but he never said he did anything. But what he did say was that she was trafficked by Epstein, and and these things happened to her. Not he didn't do any of this stuff. That stuff happened to her. But that's what I'm saying. So if he's saying that she was sex trafficked and all that stuff, she named like former governors, she named billionaires, she named Dershowitz. So his statement kind of threw shade to them, saying like, yo, she was sex trafficked, and she said I was sex trafficked to
not
have
by
sex
me.
with these guys. Yeah,
I
just
don't
not
think
by
it's
me.
admissible. I don't think it's admissible in court. I'm just saying.
Oh
You're
no,
asking the question.
it would be
what
hearsay.
impact- Yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally hearsay. That's totally.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the PR hit, because that's
Yeah.
a PR hit now for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I think that the public opinions in this case, regardless of whether or not there was a settlement here, and regardless of Prince Andrew's statement, I think the PR was the PR, right? Like, people have their opinions about Epstein, about Dershowitz, about, you know, all of this stuff that is probably not going to be too terribly impacted by these more recent events. I think a lot of people kind of have formulated their opinions for the most part.
That's true.
So, yeah, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with that other lawsuit as well. So, anyhow, let me get a couple super chats. Oh, Nate, you're muted.
Yeah, and I was going to say, last question is that, so she got $500,000 from Epstein. How much do you think she got from the prince? Because the amount was undisclosed.
Do we know how much that house sold for?
They were like 10 mil, 10, 15 mil, something like that.
All right.
So
She
I
got
think that's what she got.
All right.
I'm
The
sure
prob-
I would say she got at least 20% of that. Of that 10 million. That's my gut.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
thinking she's.
yeah.
I'm thinking she's a millionaire now. I'm thinking she's a
I
millionaire
think
now.
so. Multi-millionaire. And part of that too was supposed to be a donation to her fund, right? Or her charity for
The one that she runs.
survivors. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So she's taking. She's getting paid from that, and she got. She's killing it. She's killing it.
Yeah. That's a pretty successful day for her, I think.
You know, it could be a third to her, a third to the lawyers, and a third to the charity.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, so, you know, looking at how a lot of these agreements tend to shake out, I mean, it depends too, right? Like, if the agreement was for the attorney's fees to be paid based on time, on an hourly basis, or on a contingency basis, because that's also possible for a lot of these plaintiffs' cases. You know, a lot of these attorneys will say, you know, pay me out of whatever percentage out of the, you know, ultimately what you get out of a settlement or a judgment. And that can change depending on the stage of litigation that you're at. Now, if you know, a lot of these agreements will say, you know, before we file a complaint, to send a demand letter, we'll take a certain portion, like 15-20% or something like that. You know, and then once we file a complaint, we've got more work that we have to put into it. So that percentage is going to go up to 33%. Then, you know, when we get into the discovery phase, then it's, you know, closer to, you know, however much, you know, up until maybe half, depending on the state. So I would venture it's probably somewhere between 33 and 40% to the lawyers. That would be my guess.
That's a good payday. That's a good payday.
It's a really good payday. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. STFU FFS says, from Saget autopsy results, enlarged heart, 95% blocked on one side with a positive COVID test, suggests myocardia, and he was on the verge of a heart attack. Well, maybe he could have also just had heart disease.
I can't listen to this. I'm not being demonetized again. I can't.
Well,
None of this happened. Blah 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 blah.
To be fair, it is on my channel. Yeah, no, I mean we don't know.
That's true, right?
All we know is that he had a COVID diagnosis and he had heart blockage. So more likely, you know, if we're gonna look at this with you know,
I just hear a noise. I hear a weird noise.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a loud bass.
I'm muted.
You think it's got to be Ian, right?
I think that's me.
Oh.
I think that there's somebody using power tools outside.
Oh, no. I guess maybe if there's a way to turn down your mic gain, maybe.
Ooh, look
I'll
at
just
you.
toggle mute on and off.
Oh, okay, that's fair. I know now that I know what that means, because my mic has a gauge to turn the mic gain up and down. I remember the first time Nick Ricada asked me, like, "Hey, can you turn your mic gain down?" I was like, "My what?" Anyhow, STFU FFS also said, by the way, Joe said he wants to sell an NYPD yarmulke. Is that true, Joe?
I
said that?
I might have made reference to that at one point. Someone, I think it might have been him who asked me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Actually, I think people would kind of like that in NYPD." I never set up the whole Teespring thing. I don't know. I've been too lazy.
It's super easy.
Yeah.
They won't allow me to do it. YouTube
Why not?
says I can't do it. I don't know. I asked them if I could put a shelf.
You could
They said
sell.
it's not available to me.
Let me tell you something. You could sell dis-ease MAGA country, and you would get you would be like bringing in an extra. You would be adding like 30% to your net worth. Boom.
I'm asking for it. But the Teespring shelf, well, YouTube is doing some crazy stuff now. So that stupid shelf that you see, they said I can't get the shelf for some reason, whatever reason. But the second piece is that they're going back. I don't know if they're doing it to all you guys, but I have a couple of creators who they went back to videos from 6 months ago. Matter of fact, it just happened to Allison Morrow. 6 months ago, she did a video on COVID, and it wasn't COVID misinformation. It was actually good COVID stuff back then. It changed, and they said they just suspended her for 2 weeks. It's like, what? For something that she said 6 months ago. And the same thing happened to what's this guy? He had over 1 million subs. It happened to him too. Like a 9-month-old video. So I'm just anytime I even mention COVID now, I'm just taking down that video. I'm not even going to try to stress with it.
Yeah, that's fair. I may need to do the same on a few videos where we got into some of the discussions there. You know, some very, very good back and forth. STFU also says per Google, Giuffre or Giuffre is pronounced Giuffre. Joofree.
Really? You spell it like that, not Jew free, right? Like Nazi Germany or something. That's what her name is. Giuffre. I don't
What
know.
is this anti-Semitism?
It's not like Joe. That's like Joe with
Nazis.
2 O's, right? Go free. That's go free. What do you gotta get Jew from JOO?
No one. Yeah, you know what they're really thinking. You know what they're really thinking.
Like
Come
Jew
on.
free.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Europe
yeah.
in 1943.
So I guess it is Giuffre, like Joe.
It's so not.
A free Jew.
I'm calling her paid.
Calling her paid. Oh, and STFU also says that Nate's right. They are deep scrubbing people's videos. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, that's what happened to Uncivil Law, right? I mean, but it wasn't because of the coup, but it was because of his January 6th material, and that was nuts. So I feel like I'm probably due for something, because I think I might be the only one on LawTube who has yet to get any kind of a warning. I think
I haven't yet.
Oh, okay, never mind.
You don't really know about Canadian legal issues, so I'm good.
Oh, surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. The Canadian and Legalbytes.
Like, I gotta say one thing.
Who's nice to everyone. Yeah.
No, they got me.
You guys never got one. Yeah, of course they got you.
But there was a Twitter campaign, and they erased it from the record. So I was got, but then I'm good again. So
really, you don't even have a warning?
That's because of the New York Times article, right?
I don't even have a warning.
Wow.
Amazing.
No, I'm not even sure. When I get first they got me for something, and then Eric and Viva like blasted it, like, what the hell are you guys doing? And then YouTube came and they literally messaged me and was like, you have nothing. We're so sorry. They full apology and everything. So I was like, oh, thank God.
I remember it was a New York Times article that you had read. I don't remember what it was about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They even apologized and everything. I was like so happy. I was like, thank God, no warning. Don't treat me like Joe.
Yeah, that's true. There's like people we like, people we tolerate, people we can't stand, and then Joe level treatment.
I should probably slip out. There's a snow thrower being operated next door. And
No. I want to hear from you about Canada and the whole thing. You were like our resident expert on everything that on everything Canada. He broke it down on Nick's. He went on Nick's channel and was breaking down for them the Emergency Powers Act. But I think that's like late night. A lot of people probably didn't miss it. probably didn't see that. And
Well, that'd be
I
good,
was watching, but your perspective about what's been going on with Trudeau, if you haven't covered it yet, which I doubt you have, on this channel, I think that we really sort of need to know more about the Emergency Powers Act and the ramifications, and what does that actually, how does that translate on the street in Ottawa? I mean, there's probably been more information that's come out over the last couple of days anyway, as to like exactly how they're planning on using this to do things that they couldn't do before this measure was enacted. So,
well, there's a couple of really interesting provisions of it. One, they can compel tow truck drivers to work, and if they don't, they can face jail time. So that's a whole hell of a thing. But another one is that they've implemented something where they can freeze bank accounts just basically on the police's say-so. And normally, in order to do that, you'd have to bring a court application. You'd have to, put it in front of a court. But now they can just say, oh, yeah, we think this guy is involved in the protests, freeze all of their bank accounts.
wow.
And they're apparently planning to do that for people who donated even fairly small amounts to the Give, Send, Go, because that was, that list was leaked. And I'm just thinking, it would have been pretty easy to sign someone else up as a donor on that thing. Or, and the source of this is apparently some hacker. So who knows that it hasn't been salted with like 10 or 15 names of people he dislikes. It's... we're really going to trust this list from some rando, So I'm just like, okay, well, it's pretty terrifying. And if you happen to get named incorrectly, like let's say they think you're there because some, an officer incorrectly enters a license plate, you could end up coming home and finding that like your bank card doesn't work, and you've got no access to money. So, and there's very little remedy for that right now.
Wow.
So it's
having your bank account frozen is a massive deal. I know this as someone who's frozen bank accounts, that people freak out, and for good reason. It's like you can't, your life is in turmoil until that's resolved. And this could theoretically, if it's frozen, could be frozen for who knows how long. I mean, months.
However long the government decides to continue acting under the Emergencies Act, it sounds like.
That's insanity. That's really, really crazy. Let me ask. Go ahead.
The notion that they could, for instance, most jobs nowadays, it's hard to get paid in cash. If it's saying, hey, I need to get paid in cash because they've frozen all my accounts. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. So it's going to be real interesting. It's going to be real. And I think a lot of the people who are for this, because, this being seen as sort of a far right protest, there's a lot of people going, oh yeah, these guys are reprehensible. And let's assume you're correct about that. But you know what? They will use this again now that door has been opened, and they will absolutely, there's going to be somebody you like, even if you hate the truckers out there, somebody you like will have this used against them going forward. So, a protest like BLM, and whatever chaos was going around that, they might say, okay, we're going to start freezing bank accounts. And, think about everybody who donated to that. That's a very different, it's, I feel like a lot of the people who are like, oh, I'd never give to that, might have given to one of those other kinds of campaigns. And it's terrifying. Like
the question is
not the kind of thing that should be happening in a free country.
Right.
What was their justification for it, though? Go ahead, Alita.
That's okay. I was going to say that the question, that should be asked here is what is the standard for deciding or for deciding that it's okay to freeze bank accounts based on this kind of activity, right? Because in the future, we're talking about, let's say it's the shoes on the other foot. You've got other political activists that are engaging in certain kinds of activities, and then the government says, well, we're gonna label this terrorism so that we can do whatever we want to do, or we're gonna label this, whatever we want. What the question becomes, what is the standard that we can all, hold those politicians to say, no, you're not allowed to use this in this kind of a situation.
Well, for the Emergencies Act, it's supposed to be a national emergency, and this really contemplates things like wars or, large-scale disasters that we're really not seeing. They've said that the justification is the economic damage, and I'm like, okay, but the Emergencies Act says basically that you have to say that you can't deal with it under any other law, and Canadian law already allows them to do quite a bit. So I don't know how they get to this. They're saying that it seriously threatens the ability of the government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada. And I'm going, no, that's an exaggeration. That's overblown. In terms of the level of, evidence to freeze an account, it's a reasonable suspicion test. But that really ends up being knocked down to just subjective suspicion, because how do you fight it? We're going to freeze all your accounts, and then you're going to walk into a law firm and say, I need help to get my accounts unfrozen. And the first question they're going to say is, okay, how are we getting paid?
Yeah.
We're not launching this if we can't get paid. So good luck.
Yeah.
And as far as continuing the protest, is it because I understand they're also able to they will force tow truck operators to take trucks.
Yeah.
If that's what the goal is here, what is to stop these truckers from, instead of parking their cars, just driving 2 miles an hour in a circle?
Well, what they'd be saying is they're going to stop the truck, pull the driver out, and have the tow truck driver tow it at that point. They did sort of contemplate that notion of people, because that's one of the things they're upset about is these slow convoys.
Mm-hmm.
But the tow truck drivers, I mean, some of them are refusing to do the work because they agree with the protest. Mm-hmm. Some of them are refusing to do the work because they think it's unsafe and dangerous. If you're going in, this isn't like towing, a Civic or whatever else. These are big trucks. And you've got to go in and basically bypass the air brake systems to get them going. And so towing a vehicle where the driver doesn't want, the owner of this doesn't want to cooperate is, kind of risky. Nobody wants to be under a tow truck or under a truck trying to mess around with the air brakes if the driver might, suddenly throw it in gear. And so what they've been saying is listen, there's not enough police support for us to tow these vehicles because we need to be safe, in doing so. And if we're going to say, well, you're refusing because you think it's unsafe, but we're going to compel you to do it anyway.
Yeah.
There's also liability shields. So, they're shielded from liability for making those directions. So if you're that tow truck driver and you get sucked into an axle and crushed, well, that's really on you now. You make the call. I've got some serious issues with this whole notion of forcing people to work. I think people should be able to choose whether or not to work. Vision for, compensation, but in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say no. You can say no. Forced labor is slavery.
I was going to say in the United States, I mean, we don't often need to invoke the 13th Amendment, but that would be a situation where that would be invoked.
Yeah,
it's funny because if it's a company, you could, if let's say the tow truck is owned by a company, you could force the company to move the truck. What's it called? I forget the term of art it's used. It's in contract law a lot. What's it called?
Specific performance.
Specific performance. Yeah. You could ask for that. And two things. First, about the driving slowly, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say about specific performance. So that's a it's very rare for a court to actually
compel specific performance.
Yeah, exactly. And specifically because of 13th Amendment concerns. So that is a possibility under law, yes, of course. But
that's in America where we have a constitution. We also have laws against slavery here. I don't know if they have that up in Canada.
I mean, we normally don't allow normally it would be extremely difficult to get specific performance when you're talking about labor. You're much more likely to be able to get specific performance, for instance, about land. If there's a particular piece of land that's critical, or maybe an artwork,
because it's particularly unique, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no amount of money can actually replace the
There
production
is one
of that.
Mona Lisa. I have contracted to buy it. There is no amount of money that will substitute for that because I can't make a second one. So they might say you actually get the artwork. But to say, like, if I hired somebody to mow my lawn and they said, and we agreed they're gonna get $100 for that, and they say, you know what, it's not worth it, I'm not doing it. There's no way that I can get the court to say this guy has to mow your lawn.
Correct.
And if I go and hire somebody else to mow my lawn and it ends up costing $200 because that first guy wildly underpriced it, I might get $200, to cover that cost. But they're not going to force somebody like that's messed up.
I know. Well, I know here, like, see, even in that example, if there's a lawn mowing company and the guy says, I don't want to mow your lawn, the court could direct the company, well, you have to get somebody to mow the lawn at specific performance. You guys, the company has to do it. Usually for individuals, you're right. And there was a famous case with I forget the name of the singer, Gladys Knight, where they tried to get her to perform. They were like, well, you got a contract, so they wanted her to perform. And they were like, no, you can't force her to do it. But if the company, you
can force the pips. You can force the pips to do it.
to hire somebody else, right? But what two things though? I know here, like Joe, we were saying, could they drive 5 miles an hour on a 40? Here in the United States, you can't do that. It's like a 10-mile, like you can only drive 10 miles below the speed limit before you're blocking traffic. So I'm not sure if that's the rules in Canada. But the one thing I know, they were blocking the bridge, that major bridge, and I was like all in the news, major bridge block. I'm assuming that's illegal. So is the Canadian government saying that funding the truckers is funding illegal activity? Because I know here that's kind of how they work around it. If you're doing something illegal and we're funding you, even BLM, if BLM is doing something illegal and we're funding you, then that allows the government to give it and says, well, you're funding illegal activity, that conspiracy thing. Is that their argument, or is their argument that this protest the whole protest thing is illegal and we're going to stop funding the protest?
They've basically said that it is, funding illegal activity, but it goes beyond, like, initially they got a court order to say we're going to freeze the Give, Send, Go account. And Give, Send, Go basically said, hey, we're American, go pound sand, which gets into questions of, like, would the U.S. extradite over that violation? I don't know. The U.S. tends to be a little more protective on that sort of thing, but but now they want to go after each individual donor and freeze their entire account. So, like, let's say you have $10 million and you donated $100, they're going to freeze your $10 million. And I'm going, that's wild, right? That's
insane.
That's insane.
ending
Basically
America,
someone's whole
baby.
life.
Yeah.
These
I
are
think Americans
powers. They're not supposed to be used lightly.
Freedom, baby, freedom.
There you go. America, yeah.
America. Woo! Damn.
But, like, this is supposed to be used for, like, society is breaking down because, there's a full-on civil war, or we're attacked by aliens or something wild, not like the last time a similar power, and they actually abolished the previous War Measures Act, but the War Measures Act was sort of the father of this bit of legislation. And it's been used 3 times. The first time was World War I, and it's worth noting that one of the things they did with it was intern Ukrainians. The second time was World War II, and it's worth noting that one of the things they did with it is interning the Japanese. And then the third time was the FLQ crisis, which had like 200 bombs being set off on the street. The FLQ had apparently stolen like a literal ton of TNT.
Wow.
And they were kidnapping people, and one of them got murdered. And I'm thinking, this is not the same, right? As much as this is, saying like the US is a critical trade partner for Canada, blocking that is a huge deal. People are really angry in Ottawa because they haven't been able to sleep for 2 weeks because of people on the horns. Like, I get that they're angry.
Yeah.
But it's still not 200 bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But
such
there's
a
also,
No, no.
jump.
But this
but
law
there-
has no impact.
I think
this law.
this.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I think you're. It sounds scary to death. I got to actually have to get out of here, but that sounds scary to death. And good luck to you guys up there, man, because you're right. This doesn't sound like 200 bombs. I know here in New York they did the Black Lives Matter thing over the George Washington Bridge. The cops come, they move everything. There's no War Powers Act. It's like they move the people and we move on with our lives, right? We get like a couple of maybe an hour worth of madness, but this is insane for blocking a bridge.
Yeah.
Emergency powers, it just doesn't add up. But good luck
Yeah.
to you guys up there, man.
I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things is that normally they could just go in and clear people off. The problem that they're having is just a tactical problem, which is that once you start including these big, the semis, the police have a real issue because their tactics in terms of breaking up these protests really assume large groups of people on foot. And it's a very different equation. Like you can't kettle a semi. If you're going in and you're like, hey, we got guys with riot shields, you're not going to line those guys up in front of something that can mow them down. It's basically you're looking at this like, okay, they got 40 tanks here. How do we break this up? But there's a lot that they could have been trying that they're not trying. It's
With respect to
Overkill.
freezing the assets, this has no impact on Americans who donate. I mean, there's no way that they could possibly freeze the account of America. Like if I send money to them, I don't see how they could possibly in their jurisdiction over me.
I can't see a U.S. bank cooperating, but if your bank operates in Canada and the U.S., they might decide that they have to cooperate because of the potential for Canada to go after people.
Wow.
So
I don't see how Canada has jurisdiction over me. That just seems astonishing to me. The claim that such a thing would be an issue would be something that even because my bank that I'm in happens to work in Canada, that all of a sudden now my assets, I'm subject to the jurisdiction of freaking Trudeau. Are you kidding me?
The other thing that could happen is like, let's say you made a donation today. They might say, okay, you are now in violation of the Emergencies Act, and maybe they can't go after your bank account because you're here, because you're in the States, and I suspect the States would tell Canada to go pound sand, but Canada might issue an arrest warrant, and the U.S. might say, okay, listen, we're not going to extradite, even if Canada requests it. But 30 years down the road, you decide you want to visit Toronto, and you fly in, and they're like, hi, welcome to Canada. Turns out there's a warrant for you, and I guess you're going to be staying a little longer than you expected.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Hang on, guys. My battery seems to be exhausted. I don't know how that happened.
I stepped away a little moment ago because one of the things I got was a warrant for arrest. Not my arrest, but I ordered... there was an American who came here to film a 30-day wilderness survival challenge. And I did a video on this because they ended up getting charged with a bunch of parks violations because they did things like fishing with worms and operating a drone in a park. And I mean, this is Banff, so it's basically like Yellowstone kind of thing. It's super protected.
And really beautiful in Banff. Like really beautiful.
It's beautiful, but everything is super protected. So it's super locked down. So they cut down trees to make a tree fort, which, big no-no in that park. But this guy, there's a warrant for his arrest here in Canada. I don't think he's likely to come here to deal with it, but
yeah,
we'll see.
He'll never come. You're saying basically you can never come back.
Yeah, I don't see Canada successfully extraditing somebody for parks violations, but he's probably just going to say, listen, I'll never go to Canada again, and that'll solve the problem.
Yeah.
But it just means that he'll have a warrant for the rest of time.
Yeah.
And
does it work? Does it work from one province to another? Like is this a Canada-wide, assuming someone does have such an issue, is that a Canada-wide thing? Because we have different states, but we have comity between one state and another. It's spelled COMITY. So there's but as far as like getting I'm sure extradition would be relatively easy from one province to another, but if there's an arrest warrant that's issued in Ontario, is that going to be affecting someone who goes to Saskatchewan that they'll know about it, or they probably won't know about it, or how
So
does
the
that
way
work?
this ends up working is that these warrants are good throughout Canada, in most cases, and I think this one would be. And basically, what ends up, so let's say you've got a warrant in British Columbia and you are in Ontario, they'll probably arrest you in Ontario, and then they send a message over to BC and say, "Hey, are you willing to cover the costs of having this guy shipped? Do you want him back?" And BC may say, "You know what? Yes, we do." In which case, they'll do what's called a 6-day remand. And that basically is that they say, okay, so the test for that is there a warrant, like a valid warrant? And are you the person described? Which is a real low test. Like, it could be that you are obviously somebody who should be released, but they'll just say, okay, and they want to send you out. We'll throw you in a cart. They got 6 days to get you to British Columbia and bring you in front of a court there. So or BC might say, no, we don't want him, in which case they'll probably release you and say, okay, you're released on this warrant, but it's also still out there as a warrant. Like, it's never been properly dealt with. So unless you actually go and decide to go to BC and deal with the file, it'll still be there, and they can still arrest you every time you get a traffic ticket or every time you otherwise run into the police. So sometimes people have these out of province warrants, and it can be a real big deal in terms of like, all right, I've been arrested 20 times on this warrant that they still don't want to, because whether or not they actually want somebody brought in will really depend. Like if it's, an attempted murder or something like that, they'll say, yes, we want this guy, bring him back. But let's say it's something like, a
tree fort.
Yeah, or, a mischief. You keyed somebody's car. They're probably going to say,
screw that.
It's not worth us paying the money to bring the guy back. He's got to walk here himself so that he stops getting arrested. But yeah, 6-day remand warrant is pretty terrible. And
the last question I have for you in this interview I'm doing with you
It's good. This is good information.
There's something about 7 days that your ministry has to act within 7 days to confirm this Emergency Powers Act or something to that effect? Is there something that they have to do? And when is that supposed to be happening?
That's happening today. I think they probably will have done it by now. So basically, they have to bring it back in front of Parliament to say, hey, is this still going to go on? Now, the declaration takes effect immediately because this is, again, for use like, with wars.
They have enough votes that they're going to get that it's passing.
So there are several parties in Canada. It's not sort of the two-party system, and they all have seats. So the Bloc Québécois has said that they will not support it. They're a Quebec party, but they won't support it in large part because Quebec has a memory of the last time the War Measures Act was invoked, and they're not super thrilled about that. So they'll not vote for it. The Conservative Party is saying we're not going to vote for it. This is messed up. The NDP, so the Liberal Party doesn't have enough votes to make this happen on their own. They're a minority government, but so they need another party to support them. And the NDP has said that this reflects a failure of government, but that they will reluctantly vote for it all the same. And I'm like, you cowards. If you think this is a failure of government, stand up and say, no, we're not doing it.
And they vote in lockstep with each other, or like some is that something that?
Yeah, we actually have what they call whipped votes, and most important votes are whipped. And what that means is that if you don't vote with the direction, that you will be kicked out of the party. And if you're kicked out of the party, you are almost certainly not going to get reelected.
Wow.
Speaking of kicking people out of parties, we have with us Kurt on civil law.
Yes, with the intros.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. As I'm sure I've told many people, I moved recently, and so I've been running a whole bunch of errands. But I've been listening to you for about the last hour, and I'm sorry, Runkle, that you live in a fallen state.
When I was in law school, I had profs tell me that they were like, listen, they passed a new Emergencies Act. Expect to never see it used in your lifetime.
Wow.
Like this is, and here we are. Like, I don't like being in a, where we're making history. This
is exactly why they didn't include this clause in our Constitution, because they discussed it, because they're not idiots. They thought about this possibility. And they thought about putting a clause in our Constitution that would be something like this in the event of emergency break glass provision. And they're like, we're not going to do that, because if we put that in there explicitly, someone is going to misuse that. And so I think your country's experience is testament to that wisdom. Under our standard reviews, we have mechanisms to deal with emergencies because the facts are such that the tests we normally apply would apply and allow the government to do things they wouldn't normally do in emergencies. But it's not that we've changed the Constitution. It's just the facts changed the situation. But in your situation, it's like, let's just suspend all the rights, including apparently forced servitude, which is super exciting. That's even worse than the bank freezing, in my humble opinion. But that's just me.
I think it's pretty messed up, and especially because there was talk of like the tow truck companies, but a lot of these companies are like one guy who owns a truck.
I mean, in the United States, you could absolutely get, well, I say absolutely, at least theoretically, you could get specific performance against a company. Although it's unlikely because it's a very rare remedy, but at least theoretically. But still, at the end of the day, you have to find people. And so if you bring in the company a month later for an order to show cause, it's like, hey, you haven't performed on this specific performance. I'm poking at you some more. What's your order to show cause? It's like, well, we literally can't find the people. Here's all the steps we've taken. Here's all the things we've done to try to find people to execute on this agreement. We literally can't find the people. There's nothing for us to do. And so, that would be a satisfactory answer, at least in my view, under a legal judgment. It's not that we don't want to, we literally can't, because we can't find the people to do it. But apparently in Canada, you can make individuals somehow do things, which seems extremely odd and backwards.
Under the Emergencies Act, you can compel people to perform essential services. So this was again intended to be something for, a war, right?
We get its fundamental purpose. Jordan Peterson had on his podcast recently one of the founders, or creators of the Constitution or whatever, who basically said this is a whole bunch of bullshit. So, and he's the guy who kind of wrote it, so he would probably know. So,
yeah, and it's just like, it's messed up that you've got this, you can get up to 5 years in jail and $5,000. Now the amounts are kind of fun.
I always liked laws like that in the United States too, because we have the same thing. It never made any sense to me. It's like, why do we have this 5 years and 5,000? Who cares about the $5,000 at this point?
The thing is, it used to be a whole lot of money because it was back in the 80s. Nobody ever felt like, nobody thought that this was going to be a thing, and so nobody went back and updated the amounts. And so,
can I take the $5,000 instead?
Yeah, really. That's what I'm saying. Jeez, I was 25 years, $25,000. Like, all right, you check, man. Jeez.
Yeah, my 5 years of my life is worth a lot more than.
I'm pretty sure it was worth more than in the 80s.
Yeah,
I'm not sure inflation's the problem there.
I know. Let me get caught up on some super chats. STFU says the Canuck elf gets away with mailing people weapons. I'm not sure what that's about.
I think it's about Ian.
Yeah, but I don't know about mailing people weapons.
Well, I mean, we do actually have the ability to mail a fair bit of weaponry, but
okay.
So, I don't think I've mailed any though yet. The kukri that for the giveaway is still being made, so that will go out at some point.
Mike the Dad Crosby says, can we get someone to add Trudeau's name to the list as a donor?
He probably is already, I would imagine, if I were a betting man.
Probably multiple times at this point. Someone has been like, in his name.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he's been the biggest donor so far.
I mean, the thing is I knew Give Send Go didn't have the greatest security because they'd been, if I recall, breached before.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's fairly easy to just, I don't know that everyone who's on that donor list necessarily is an actual donor, because, it would have been real easy to go and, use some random credit card or a stolen credit card or something like that. You just make a donation in somebody else's name.
Right.
Yeah.
And then their whole life is ruined.
They're going to make every one of those people prostrate themselves before the governor general on behalf of the queen. And that maybe then they'll get forgiveness. That's basically where that's heading.
I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Well, and the other funny thing is that they've issued this direction to freeze certain crypto accounts. And it's like,
I saw that.
Yeah,
Well,
which I don't know
manage
how that's
children.
supposed to work, but okay.
Yeah, because crypto transactions are not entirely private, right? I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Is that they're all in a public ledger.
Yeah.
But there is an element of privacy to it, which is one of the draws that people have towards cryptocurrency. And this kind of a situation is kind of one of the core reasons why people flocked like early on, like the earliest crypto adopters were quite libertarian, I want to say. At least the ones that I knew of. Because they specifically were afraid of like things like this, like the state saying, no, we're gonna freeze all of your money. You can't use it, and screw you.
Guys, I gotta fly out of here.
Okay.
But, yeah, I have my gun registration thing requires me to, I'm covering this on my channel that I'm getting ready. I'm a Jew from New York getting a gun, which if you're from New York or a Jew, getting a gun is like a big deal. I've never held a gun in my hand ever in my life.
You've never gone to a gun range?
No. This is like a really big deal. So part of the process is I have to go down to the police department and prove who I am with proof of address, and I got to bring a passport and my driver's license and 3 pieces of mail, my social security card. I'm not even making this up, and a pay stub. And I actually said to the detective who's doing the investigation to me, I was like, I don't even have a pay. I haven't got a pay stub since I was like 18. So he's like, all right, just bring whatever you got. So I'm like, okay. And the window of opportunity they give me to go there is between 2 and 4 p.m. on Thursdays. This is
very short window.
Yes. So I gotta get all my stuff together and get down there. So I appreciate your company. You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
And if you're not subscribed yet, probably statistics say probably 30% of you are not subscribed. So hit the button and sign up for these two guys. These two guys are right.
Yeah.
They're both good people. Thank you guys. I'll catch you soon.
All righty. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Joe. Thanks for your comments and for your questions and everything.
My pleasure.
It's been great. Andy the Game Makers. What's that?
I was just saying, always good to see you.
Andy the Game Maker says Ian is not from Canada. He's from the Mirkwood, where he carries a bow and quiver. All this gun talk from Ian is a lie.
The gun is just a modern bow.
STFU says the 13th Amendment can only be invoked if the person being compelled has clean hands. If the driver is convicted of obstruction, they lose their 13th Amendment rights. Well, so we're talking about 13th Amendment in not in regards to the truck drivers who are parked. We are talking about the people that are being compelled to do work to tow those big trucks. So these are people that ostensibly have nothing to do with this protest, right? At least in theory. Maybe some of them have been joining the protest, but or have been supporting it. But these are just, there's no relationship between the protests going on and the people being compelled, other than that they are being brought in.
Also, on just a purely factual level, the only context in which I'm aware of forced labor in the United States is inside prisons for prison labor, which the 13th Amendment does allow for better or worse, which is a whole debatable point unto itself. Right. But I'm not aware of any context outside of in-prison labor that can be compelled. So I don't know what STFU is talking about.
Yeah, not so sure. STFU says, as an American born in Mexico, I say truck fudo.
Yeah.
And he also says comedy is com-ity, comedy is com-edy. I was referring, Kurt, this is before you came on, that was referring to Joe using the term comity. Marcel Defour says, hi, Elf Runkle. I live in Calgary and make Smith knives. If I make you a knife, could you make me a sheath?
And probably hit me up on, if you go to my channel, there's the about and there's a click for email address. That's how you'd reach me.
Awesome.
So
Cynic in Chief says the slavery / forced labor is to appease Justin's Chinese overlords. Whether he is a son of Pierre or Fidel, he is living up to the Castro name. I mean, I don't know about the Chinese overlords, but I mean, it definitely is very, very concerning what's happening right now there. But if you guys are okay with it, let's shift gears to talk about.
No, I want to talk more about Canada and how it's a completely broken country that's come into a tyranny that apparently has a new king, Trudeau, and needs to be saved apparently rapidly.
Well, let's talk about another self-coronated king. His
Canada
name
does
is
have oil, so
the other self-coronated king is Mark Zuckerberg, of course. The last subject on our list of topics today. So there's been a few lawsuits that Facebook has been the subject of, or for which Facebook has been the subject. If I'm to be grammatically correct. Anyhow.
You're doing this whole prepositions at the end of sentences bullshit? Oh, come on.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
That's bullshit. I reject that rule. Screw that.
I always try to be as grammatically correct as possible.
I don't acknowledge that rule. It's just a made up rule. Like most rules of English grammar, for that matter, are just made up. They were invented by one author one time and kind of stuck on. But there are, in fact, no official rules. So screw that.
Okay.
We're not a constructed language like the French, man. I'll do it any way I want.
America.
Yeah.
So anyway, so these lawsuits are having to do with Cambridge Analytica in the 2016 election, and Facebook, which of course is a beacon, a model company for, data protection and privacy. They are like the shining standard, of course.
Yeah, that is totally their reputation.
And they have proven this time and again over the years. So no, they've got several lawsuits. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has had to testify in front of Congress. They've got, a whole situation with the SEC, the FTC. They've got this lawsuit in the Northern District of California. And so right now, it seems like there's a number of controversies coming out of Facebook having to do with how much Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg knew about the whole data breach situation with Cambridge Analytica at the time that it was happening, when they were trying to sort of maybe cover it up, maybe kind of clean it up. I don't know, depending on how you characterize it. He testified to Congress that he found out about it when everybody else found out about it, with the Guardian article that came out to sort of put this whole thing on display for everyone. But apparently there's some discovery that says otherwise, that says that he knew about it pretty much at the time that it was happening. And the controversy right now has been that Facebook has been fighting so hard to prevent the depositions of Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg, and they've been trying to prevent any kind of discovery having to do with them and their knowledge. That the Northern District of California, that judge is fed up. He is totally fed up. And he basically, so I in the title, I said that the judge yelled at Facebook, maybe not exactly explicitly yelled at them, but he basically invited the plaintiff in that case to file for sanctions, to get sanctions, not just against Facebook, but against the partners of Gibson Dunn, their attorneys. He's saying that they were so dirty in all of this, and they're so frustrated with the gamesmanship that the Facebook has been putting on, that he's welcoming sanctions to be filed in this particular case. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
I saw a little bit about it, and I mean, this I don't know about where you guys are, but here, like sanctions against the lawyers is a bit of a big step. Like if there's,
Yes.
and you know, there's lots of lawyers out there who've gone through an entire career without facing like personal sanctions. That's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, because you've got, I mean, when you have an attorney representing a client in this kind of litigation and you're trying to protect, you know, your client's information, their position, you know, what have you, you might be getting instructions, you know, from your client saying, I'm not giving this over. I'm not doing this. I will not sit for a deposition. And so that the lawyer can be kind of caught in a difficult place because number one, you have to zealously advocate for your client. But number two, you also can't be a dirty, dirty lawyer and be engaging in crazy tricks. So, you know, the in order for sanctions to be given also to the partners, also to the law firm, is a big step in the United States as well. Yeah. Kurt, you got any thoughts on this one?
Not in particular, without looking at more at the facts. I mean, I agree with you that sanctions against the attorney are very unusual. And you would expect it to not be the first step along the way. Facebook fighting tooth and nail for this is within their province. And I don't really have much more intelligent comment beyond that. I don't know enough to have an opinion.
Okay. So, well, I guess the one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about here is just it opens up an interesting discussion about discovery. Because when a case goes into litigation, you know, and we get past the complaint, we get past a potential motion to dismiss, whether or not there's one that's been filed in a case, then we get into the discovery phase. And generally speaking, it's very, very, very open. Well, hello, puppy. If there is any kind of information, not only that seems relevant, but seems likely to lead to relevant information, then hello, you have something to say. Hi, puppy. Okay. So, you know, then the lawyers on the other side are most likely going to be entitled to it. So, it's very, very difficult to say, no, sorry, this is private information. But there is a possibility to say, well, this actually does get into other confidential information for some reason. Maybe it's internal business stuff that's unrelated to this litigation, or, you know, most of the cases that I dealt with had to do with, you know, an individual's private information, like medical information, et cetera, et cetera. So, but there is a way to say, okay, we will give this over, but I think, but at the same time, we will file for a protective order. You know, we'll give you a privilege log. We'll tell you what we're not going to give you, and we'll describe it, and we'll explain why we're not going to give it to you. So that's typically what happens and what's proper. But here, it is highly, highly relevant what Mark Zuckerberg knew and what Sheryl Sandberg knew at the time and when they knew it, right? So anyhow, yeah.
I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that they were vaguely aware of it and were aware of the crisis and probably were trying to crisis manage it. I just don't know what value that ultimately has at the end of the day. I mean, just assume all that's true. What value does it have to your lawsuit, really? I mean, I'm not sure.
So let's see. Yeah. Let me pull up some tweets here from a journalist that was at this most recent hearing. Maybe we can get some discussion here. Okay. So this is Jason Kint. He's been tweeting about this this lawsuit. So on February 11th, they had a hearing on the subject, and the judge basically already told the plaintiffs to file a motion for sanctions because Facebook discovery conduct has been sanctionable. More coming. The judge already said he thinks the partners at Gibson Dunn should be sanctioned. The plaintiff should be rewarded all costs and plaintiff's fees on the discovery issues. Let's see. Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, their board and leadership team owe Sandeep Solankin, who is taking one for the team on their multi-year cover-up. He's up now. Judge told Solankin he has to attend all status conferences. He's required to attend all mediation sessions with special master and to make a final decision on Facebook's behalf in all mediation sessions. If he needs to run anything up the flagpole, then the flagpole needs to attend. So whatever's been going on between these parties, it seems like Facebook has been really frustrating this process. Now, another aspect of this is that, when it comes to discovery, judges generally don't like being involved. They don't like getting involved in the sort of tit for tat negotiation that goes back and forth between the parties.
Yeah.
So what happens between the parties is you say, okay, I'm requesting XYZ information. And then the other side says, no, we're not going to give it to you. We object because of this reason, this reason, this reason. And then you have to meet and confer with them. You have to kind of negotiate it out and say, no, you're wrong because of this, or they'll say, no, I'm right because of this. And so what happens is then, typically you end up getting whatever information is proper. Things kind of shake out. But if one side is just being obdurate for really no reason, or maybe not a good enough reason, then you file a motion to compel discovery with the court. And courts, if they find that you could have done more to negotiate this, they typically tend to be a little bit annoyed with you because they don't like being involved. They already have a busy docket. They already have a lot on their plates. And so they tend to get annoyed. So the fact that here this judge is very, very decisive and is really coming down hard on Facebook means that there's been some mad issues going on here in this discovery process. Sorry, Kurt, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. So, let's see here. So Facebook's legal team has to turn over all documents from the app developer investigation within 21 days, and within all discovery, any doubts should be turned over to the plaintiffs. Court also said to take any depositions now. It's Facebook's fault that things have been delayed, and if the plaintiffs need to depose anyone twice from Facebook, then they'll be able to do that. That's a lot of power that the plaintiffs have then. And then I guess that was the end of this particular hearing. But the issue here is how I mean, really, I think one of the key things that they are trying to get at here is like I said, just how much the leadership was involved in not just knowing that this issue was happening, but the cover up, so to speak. Right. Because it's like, when we look at these sort of corporate controversies, there's the issue, and then there's the crime, which tends not to be the underlying issue, but the cover up of the issue. So it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, I was very surprised to come across this kind of situation going on with Facebook of all companies, because this is not just some small company that has like a ragtag group of lawyers that they may or may not be paying a bunch of money. This is Gibson Dunn. This is a big firm. So the idea that there has been this much frustration of the litigation process means that they are really getting into an information that Facebook does not want to give up. And it kind of makes me a little bit more intrigued as to what it is that they don't want people to see, right? Like that whole Barbara Streisand effect.
What is so important that you're willing to eat sanctions over it?
Yeah,
I mean, exactly. I'm obviously speculating in my head on the basis of no inside information, but I would imagine that even if you do get them for depositions, they're going to be so well coached on their answers that I'm not sure what you're getting out of them in the end that's going to be helpful. I think you can probably get them to admit that they were aware of it at the time. You can probably get them to admit that they were providing some kind of direction on some level, but it might have been very tangential. It might have been just, keep me apprised, and, depending on the leadership structure, it might have been more involved. So depending on the situation there, but I'm not I'm not really imagining. I'm having a hard time imagining you're going to get this like Perry Mason moment where they're going to kind of like confess on the stand, as it were, in a deposition, and
Well, of
give you
course, yeah.
the case. I can imagine why they're not thrilled about it, because they probably don't want their leadership to be harassed, and they don't want to go into things, and they're not thrilled about the exposure and everything else. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not imaginative enough, and this big law firm knows something I don't know. So
Well,
They're
I
going to
think-
get Zuckerberg on the stand, and then they're going to hit him with a logical paradox and shut down his programming.
well, I think that part of the issue here is I'm going to share a video with you, and this is from his from when he testified to Congress, and hopefully this will actually play. I don't know if you guys
I heard something.
Oh, you did hear
Yeah.
something? Okay, good. Let me make sure that this is up all the way. And I think that part of this is there's some really bad optics here for the company, based on the disparity of what he's saying, what he's going to say in this video versus what's going to come out in discovery. And I think that this may be one of the things that they are particularly afraid of. Oh, of course, now it's the pinwheel of death. Oh, come on.
Because it's AOC talking.
Of course.
I probably have to duck out at this point, but
Oh, okay.
thank you for having me on. And
Yeah.
It's nice to know that you still have internet up there, and they haven't, filtered all that yet. So,
well, and they haven't
Prevented
frozen my bank
blocking
accounts
the
personally yet, so we'll see. Or decided to seize my YouTube channel. We'll see how that
well,
goes.
that'll be good.
All right, let's see. I think it's playing this
But
time.
thanks for coming here.
Yeah, thanks for
Cheers.
joining us.
And always good to
See
see
you.
both of you. So
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Oh, are
What do
you
you-
kidding me?
What do you got, Miss Ocasio-Cortez?
It is not.
The venerable.
Videos
It's
are
so
not
fresh, so face, AOC.
videos are not doing well for me. Ugh, okay, but then I guess I can just summarize it. So she asked him, when did you find out about this whole issue? When did you find out about the Cambridge Analytica situation, and that things that data had been breached, et cetera, et cetera? And he said, I found out basically when everyone else did. And that turns out to be quite a lie, I think, based on the information that seems to be coming out in discovery, because it sounds like he's probably been kept off of emails. There's been a lot of dialogue between him and Sheryl Sandberg that is probably in person. There's probably some information that you can't really get through documentary evidence that you kind of need to get by talking to these individuals through a deposition, that would implicate him as being very, very, very directly involved in that whole situation.
Well, if that's the problem, if they're worried about a potential perjury conflict, then obviously that's a real issue. But then don't commit perjury would be the answer to that question.
That would be the answer, right? I would think so. Anyhow, let me get a few super chats here just to get caught up. STFU says dirty lawyer feels very redundant. Probably in a lot of cases. Cherokee Girl says best indie appearance ever. Thank you. I know she was she's getting a little bit rambunctious now. STFU says obdurate, stubbornly refusing to change one's opinion for course of action. Great word solicitor. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And STFU says Kurt strikeout, Perry Mason replaced with Groskowitz.
Yeah, well, that was a pretty funny moment on the stand, to be sure.
It was a good moment. Anyhow, I think we could probably cut it off about now. I think we've been going for a while, but thanks for joining me.
No problem. Yeah, sorry I couldn't join earlier. It looked like a lot
That's
of fun.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand that when you're moving, you've got a lot of moving pieces, but so I would imagine that there's a lot of little things that you've got to do to arrange to get things kind of set up properly in your new space.
I mean, I must have moved 5 times or 6 times when I lived in Virginia, and I don't remember it being this tiring. So maybe I'm just getting old. because my next moving plan looks a lot like set everything on fire, and then if it doesn't exist anymore, I won't have to move it.
That's true. That is
Yeah.
very true. That is very true.
So,
So-
I'm not sure about all that, but yeah. But the new
Anyhow.
place is good. It's a lot quieter, so that should help with recording as soon as I figure out the mic reverb for this room. So I have to go into my OBS settings and play around with that for a while. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, that makes sense. New space, new acoustics to figure out.
Fun.
That's normal fun stuff. So anyhow, well, for everyone else, thank you so much for watching and joining and commenting in the live chat. And I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, see ya.